Asia, can you put your name on the back, please?
Is my name on it?
Yep. What's your assignment? I gave it all back to everybody yesterday. Because you were supposed to finish with everybody, not everyone completed it completely. Thank you. Thank
Did you work on that?
you. Who needs to work on being proactive?
No.
Thank you. Again, use your name on the back, please. I said the back.
Did I see you? No. Do you have a Band-Aid? And I'm not gonna respond. Do you see that? I'm not actually. Oh, this is
I already collected yours, right?
Can you, I put my name on the back.
I'm coming. Alright, we're gonna get started in just a minute. I'll explain why I needed it on the back in a second. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Alright, I have everybody's homework assignment, correct?
Sure.
Sure.
I gotta go buy some over there. There's a bar. What did you make on your runner shirt? Oh my God.
What is experience?
This is the session ID back there, 783-864. That's right.
Oh, I made a one.
What did you tell me? You're still supposed to justify it. Like, tell me why you're doing what you're doing, or tell me any other important details. We'll talk about a couple of things really quickly.
Dude, my white guys.
So there's a bunch of these on there. Alright, if I can grab everyone's attention, it's time to get started talking about this. Okay, so I'm going to talk briefly through pretty much everything, but I figured the biggest thing we definitely need to talk about is types of sampling, technique, and bias. That was probably the most missed one on here, so we're going to talk about it. I'm going to stop the poll now. Okay, so let me get my slides up, play from current slide. So just like I did the other day when it came to the homework, and I quickly went through everything, but I specifically talked pretty heavily about the things y'all had actual questions about. That's what we're about to do, this understanding check, so that you see several things. Also, by the way, the reason why I needed y'all to make sure your name was on the back side is because if I use the scanner that I have over here, it can't do two-sided scanning. You can only do one page at like one side. That's why I needed your name on the back where the homework assignment was, so that I can give it back to you and we can talk about that problem today. So, agenda, we're going to have an understanding check discussion. Totally forgot to update the rest of this agenda, but it's fine. We have other stuff about histograms, interpreting mean and standard deviation, and actually talking about the probability underneath that curve. And Zaria's really excited to learn today, right? Come on, guys. Get excited. If you need to move around a little bit, do it. I'm telling you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Candy. Get that energy going. All right. I got all of 4 hours of sleep last night because I was scoring these understanding checks and trying to get feedback. I get what it means to be tired, but I'm still making it work,
Some
okay?
T-Town would help.
Say it again.
T-Town
T-Town would
nutrition.
help.
Say it louder.
T-Town would help.
T-Town nutrition.
Kind of not here.
There's this thing called coffee at home. I'm good. All right.
T-Town's
Let
so-
me throw it away.
A couple of quick things to remember. right? The whole point of me using this rubric, one, get it out anytime I give an understanding check back. Don't just look at it because otherwise those numbers don't mean a whole lot. Get out the rubric for how I score. These things matter, right? Because it's important, right? No 0 to 1, yes, little or no evidence of your conceptual understanding and or procedural fluency, but each of those things mean a little bit different. If you see a 1 plus, literally that means you got the answer right, but you didn't tell me why.
Hey.
You have to justify everything. I told you from the very beginning, I went over this rubric before you took the understanding check. You have to justify. Tell me why. That's what I'm consistently looking for, okay? So pay attention to that, right? The 1s and 1 minuses, pay attention to that. Hudson did already ask the question, what does the D mean? I got that all over my paper. Well, if you are missing details in your justification, right? So maybe you started a justification, but the 2D plus or the 3D or 3D plus are different gradients for how much you're missing in terms of details, right? And so if you see D, man, that means you're missing details that you need in your justification. If you have a C, that means that you tried justifying it, but there was a conceptual error in that justification. And then the P means that you made a procedural error. And Emma said, well, I did the random number generator on my calculator, right? Why did I need to write it down? I showed that I could do it. You said that, right? And that's totally fine. But remember, that's the procedural fluency. You were showing me that you understood the procedure. I always need you to tell me that you understand the concept as well, which is why I need you to justify. All right? It doesn't matter what it is. It's not just about completing a procedure. It's about being able to justify and explain your ideas. Tell me why. Okay? So I'm going to talk through some of these things. Apparently I forgot to put the higher levels on here. But again, like you look at the 3 or the 4, that means you show me clear evidence of your understanding, and a 4 means clear, consistent, and convincing evidence of your understanding. Please remember, that doesn't mean you don't, if you scored less than a 3 or a 4, that doesn't mean you don't know it. It means that you didn't show me everything I needed for me to wholeheartedly believe that you understand what's going on. That just means you didn't give me the evidence. Learn from that, figure out how to give evidence better. So, here's a couple of quick things. Please note, right, statistical questions. Is there a U anywhere in my response? Do I say how many pets do you have? No, because if I say, hey Madison, how many pets do you have? How many pets do you got?
2.
2. Do you have any other response to that, or is it just 2?
Just 2.
Just 2. But if it's how many pets do students at Hillcrest High School have, and I updated this a little bit afterwards, I realized I should say what is a typical number of pets students at Hillcrest High School have, or how many pets do students at Hillcrest High School have on average, right? Because I don't want to know each individual, right? I want to know, hey, how many pets do they typically have? So that now when I collect data from every one of you, will I get a different response? Yes. Oh, by the way, guys, I've already made scans of these understanding checks. These are yours to do with as you will, to learn and make sense out of. So if you want to write notes on there or get a separate sheet of paper out to make notes, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Make sure you learn from your mistakes. Don't sit there and be all upset, because we already talked about this once. Is this one, there's no grade on here, you don't know what your final grade is, because I don't want you to think about it. I want you to figure out how to grow and learn. But whatever your grade is for this, is it finished? Is it done? No. Why not?
Because the test is finished.
Because if you score better on the test, if you show me greater mastery of these concepts on the test, then you're going to be good to go in my class. So write down notes. Yes, I gave you feedback, but maybe there's something that you should also write down. So I would have a pencil in my hand, or a pen in my hand, or something in my hand at all times to be ready. Yes, Madison?
Wait, what is this test?
It's a great question when we finish studying this content.
When we finish studying the content. Oh God.
There you go, Elijah. All
I'm
right.
asking you. Oh
I
God.
don't know.
Are you
I mean, so we can prepare ourselves, so we can get.
Let me ask you this. Would you like me to tell you that it's next Friday and then give you a test that we haven't finished studying everything for? So it would probably be a better thing for me to wait to see when we start to finish, so I could be like, hey, I'll always give you 4 or 5 days heads up. But I can't tell you right now. I would like to be completely done, honestly, by next Wednesday, but it depends on y'all. I'm going to adjust my speed based on what y'all's needs are. So you also don't, listen to me very clearly on this, you don't have to wait to know that there's a test to start to study. You don't. You could take 10 to 15 minutes, make sure you're doing your homework every night, and if you don't have homework, look back over your notes. A whole lot of us could have benefited from that here, or just studying in general. I would say a whole lot of us forgot to study in this class. It helps, okay? But we need to recognize one of the big things, again, is for it to be a statistical question, what do you need? To be a statistical question, there needs to be variability. Guys, to have a statistical question, there needs to be variability. That's why I made the note right here, different students have different quantities, i.e. variability. That's what made my question statistical, because every single student, or not every student would have the same answer. There'd be variability in my responses. If you didn't recognize that, that's what you need to write about statistical questions. There needs to be variability. Notice, you don't have to write a ton. Right here, I just made a quick note. If it's how many pets, and I probably should have done, I would have probably only scored this as a 4, not a 4+. But how many pets do students at Hillcrest High School typically have? Okay, that's numerical. That's not a number, that's going to be a category, that's numerical, right? I'm measuring the number of pets in a way by counting, okay? What are your questions before we move forward to question 2? Yeah, and remember this part of your active collaboration side of things. So if it's just, hey, I didn't justify it, I get it, but please do be careful, right? Numerical means we need numbers, but if you were to, that's all I think one student in this class was asking about how many more overweight students does Shelton have than University of Alabama. Well, how many more, that is a number, right? But what's the question you'd be asking somebody, or you'd be trying to answer about each
How much
individual?
do you weigh?
Well, maybe, and that's what we would probably want it to be in order to make it numerical. But if I'm just asking how many more students does Shelton have that are overweight than UA,
You can't do that.
are you overweight or are you not? That's the question you're asking. Those are categories.
But what if they don't know?
But there's like a lot more students at UA.
Right. So
Okay, but
again,
it's a
There's like a lot more
science.
students
Okay.
at UA though.
I'm not saying, it might have been the other way around, but that's not the point. The point is, if you're asking if they're overweight or not, that's categorical, not numerical. Now, could you have very quickly transitioned that and said, what is the average weight of students at UA compared to Shelton? Yes, then that would make it numerical. That's what I want you to recognize, right? Be careful about that. Weight does have to deal with numbers, but it depends on the way that you word it. Okay, so look at that. And don't forget, I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to spend forever here, but if you want to, I do have tutoring every single week. I emailed that to y'all in the class newsletter that emailed out on Saturday. So you can look there to find out what the tutoring hours are. Looking at number 2, notice I do a whole lot of this where I circle or underline things and I identify where stuff is coming in order to raise that level of evidence. You don't have to make the longest sentences in the world because I am teaching you statistics. And when it gets to interpreting data, yes, you want complete context. And I just need clear evidence that you understand what's going on. So, notice here, just observed, no questions asked. Really, I should probably also say no what? What makes an experiment an experiment? Starts with a T. Treatments are a part of that testing, a part of that experimentation. So if there's no questions being asked, there's no treatments here, we're just observing, and that symbol just means therefore, an observational study. Notice how I made a claim. It's an observational study. But I also provided evidence. Whenever you make an argument, and that's what you should be doing in my class every time on assessments, anytime you make an argument, you need to have evidence for whatever your claim is. Population. And this is the one thing I'm going to say here, and I've made a note on this for a lot of students. You need to remember the population is the people or the things about whom you want to make an inference. Okay? That's the people that you want to make a prediction about. Remember when we did the average word length thing, we were trying to make a prediction about what the average word length was for the entire song. So it was all words in the song. That was my population, right? It's the group that you're trying to make an inference about, or in here in pink, I made the note, that's the big group that I want to know about, right? You don't have to use that super heavy language of making an inference. I just simply said that's the big group that we want to know about. That's it. That's what my population is. Okay? But I want you to notice the sample, the most common mistake I saw on sample here was that I saw a lot of students talk about the 168 high school programs in 3 southern states. However, can the population be students, that's who I want to know about, and then the sample be the schools? No. It's not just about the schools, it's the students at those schools. A lot of y'all probably got notes from me that the units need to match. If my population is students, my sample needs to be students. The 168, are you focusing on your own learning and education?
Yes,
group?
I just spilled
Not-
some of my coffee.
Oh no.
So,
There's paper towels back there.
that's why I was,
I thought Madison was
You was on-
focused on something else.
no, talking to me.
Me?
No, me.
Madison, who was communicating among the group about something other than the understanding check. That's who I was referring to. So, please note that one of the big things that, and I even modified this later, don't forget population in sample, that's always the who. The characteristic of interest really is just the what. The daily gym class, that was the characteristic of interest for that population. The characteristic of interest was just the daily gym class, the what. Okay? While some of us are still writing that down, I appreciate that. What are y'all's questions before I continue? Yes, Melboria. Yes. You always have to explain it. It's going to be the same unit. So like notice, because I even made the note up here, right? This is the sample, right? I should have added more detail than I did for the next question. This is the group from whom I actually get data. That's how we know that's the sample. This is the group that we're trying to make a prediction about, right? Big group, want to know about. So this is the sample, the specific group I have. It's just harder for me to write small on my tablet or on my computer. That's why I didn't have enough room. But you always have to justify. And remember, the sample is always the smaller group from the population. Okay? Why did I skip to B and 3? I know I put those slides in there for. I had those in there from yesterday's. There we go. Okay. So from here, do notes, right? Sample survey. A lot of y'all just noted that was a survey. What I'll probably change it to in the future is a questionnaire because we're directly asking questions. That's why it's a sample survey. The 1,500 students is the sample. Notice that's who we actually got the data from. The population was all those 18 to 21-year-old college students, not just college students, because are there students in college who are not 18 to 21? Most students graduate college at 22. You could be in grad school. I went back and got a degree after I graduated from my undergrad. Some students go to college early, right? So we only cared about the 18 to 21-year-old college students. Right? And again, I modified this later. It's more the what, just at least one science lab class. And be careful. I saw a lot of people here talking about how many lab classes. That wasn't the question. It was just about if they took at least one. Not how many, just at least one. Use the actual language from the question. Okay. Hopefully that's helping. Hopefully that's something we can learn from. Trying to remember if there's anything else. Oh, the other thing, You see the 60%? You saw the 1/3 from the previous question? That doesn't tie into the sample, the population, the characteristic of interest, anything like that. Because the sample is just who we are getting the actual data from. That 60% is the actual data collected. The 1/3 is the actual data collected, not the sample, not the population, anything like that. So what we know, or what we would say is, from that 1,500 students, about 60% of them took at least one lab class. So what would we predict about the population in respect to our characteristic of interest? About 60% of them took at least one lab class, right? That's the actual data from the sample, so we would make an approximation, make a prediction about that population from there. You good, Madison?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So saying for the characteristic of interest, saying how many students would we count?
Characteristic of interest is only the what, right? It's only taking, and really, yeah, it should be taking at least one science lab class. It's just the what, that's the characteristic of interest. What are we trying to find out? Taking at least one lab class. The who, right, would be a part of the sample or part of the population, or it might be the data, right? So that's a good question. The biggest issue in this class is we forgot to justify the random number generator. The other thing is this: can you use a number more than once?
No.
No. You had to mention that to score higher. You could not repeat a number, right? That was the difference. The idea of without repetition was the difference between a 4 and a 4+. But also if you were missing other things, that's what dropped your score as well. So you have to remember you cannot repeat a number, and so it's without repetition. The other thing to remember is this: I saw a lot of students struggling with this. You're not averaging those numbers. Those are just identifiers. So like if I have 99 students, I would select, is that 61, is that the first one? On line 4?
Yeah.
So you would select the 61st, I can't tell, 56th maybe? Thank you, I'm just going to do this because it's going to be way easier. But yeah, 61st, 55th, 57th, 64th, 4th, right? So I would just, those are the people I would look at. Those are identifiers. I'm not actually averaging those. And so you should have noted that. The other thing is, I saw people jumping. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not jump along the table. You pick a line, and then because 99 is the largest identifier, we go 2 digits, right? So if I'm looking at line 2, I start with the first number, which is 17. Then I use 26. Then I use 45. Then you go in order. You do not skip numbers. You go every 2, or if you have a 3-digit number, you go every 3. But you do not skip, otherwise it's not random. Does anybody need me, well, someone have a question about the random digit table first? Madison, you need to stand up so you can wake up. Go for it.
I'm good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, Kai.
Could you give an example of other things that you most likely had to include?
It's written on here. Right, 99 is the largest identifier, so go to a line, find 2-digit numbers without repetition. And so see line 4, 12 of those numbers for 12 data points, and so there's my sample.
We had to write down all the numbers that we got too, right?
I mean, if you circle on here, I'd be okay. But, yeah. Yes, Mel, where are you?
Oh God, what is
When we
that?
were doing like random digit table, I thought like you were supposed to just like circle the numbers in that box, like how many you see, like you can see like, let's say like 12 and then like 36, and then like you skip over to the next box and there's like,
You only skipped when we didn't have a number that matched. So I think in this class, the maximum number of words in the song was 384, right? something like that. So 172 works, but the next number is 640 something. I can't do 645, so I skip 645. Can't do 732, can't do 738, I can do 224. So you only skip when you can't use that number. But we're literally using 2-digit numbers between 0, 1, and 99. I can use every number that comes up. So I only skip when I can't use that number. Okay? Some of us were struggling with the calculator, but I do want y'all to notice, like, I don't need you to just tell me buttons. I need you to tell me key things to remember, right? So if you go to the random number generator on your calculator, I just need you to tell me that you're going to use rand integer between 1 and 99, and then that you're going to do it 12 times to get 12 numbers, but then it has to be without what? That's it. That's all I needed.
Without what?
Huh? Without repetition. So like you can't have a number more than one time. Okay? But that's also, you could do rand integer 1, 99, 12. You could have done either of those options. Okay? But I just need you to tell me that detail of when I do this, I cannot have repetition, and then I need you to show me that you can do it. But please notice, like, just pushing buttons, yeah, that tells me you can do a procedure, but I need you to tell me that, hey, I know I can't have repetition in there. All right? Yes, got it.
You have to be extremely specific
In what regard?
in both regards when you say repetition.
Well, I mean, you have to tell me that you can't have repetition, yeah. Because you can't repeat a number. Like, you wouldn't choose the 25th person and then the 25th person again. Those are the same person.
So for example, I can say it can't be the same number twice, right?
Correct. Yeah. You can just say you can't use the same number twice. That's it.
So what happened to the little circle on the random digit?
Remember, you're doing two different samples. One on the random digit table, you're doing 12 numbers to show you know how to use the random digit table. You're doing a completely different sample on the random number generator on the calculator. Those can overlap, that's fine. I'm just saying if you do 12 on the table, you can't have repetition. When you do 12 on the calculator, you can't have repetition. So if you have something that repeats, you'd have to skip it. Yes, ma'am?
If you have repetition on the calculator, how would you do it again to not have like?
So it depends. If you're doing rand integer 199, just do another number until you get 12 unique numbers. If you do rand int and you do 1, 99, 12, just do another set of that until you get 12 completely different numbers. Or you could even do 14 or 15 here and just take the first 12 that are not the same. Does that make sense? So you just have to make sure that you pick 12. So that's a good question. All right. So this part, they all struggle with the most. Woo! Sampling techniques. Convenience samples, volunteer samples, subjective samples, and simple random samples. Those were the sampling techniques, not the types of studies. The types of studies was on the other side. When I talk about sampling techniques, types of sampling techniques, we're talking about convenience samples, simple random samples, volunteer samples, and subjective samples. Notice I justified each type of sample. I will say this would probably only be a 3+ or maybe a 4. I should have explained why it was biased a little bit better. Notice with a simple random sample, I said not biased, representative population because random, right? So the implication is that these are biased because they're not random, but probably only a 4 then, not a 4+. I should have given more detail on each of those. Did we just forget about these sampling techniques for some of us?
Dude, I'm gonna fall asleep.
No, I said identify all techniques that would result in biased sample. I got you. But this is in your textbook. If you want to write this down, I meant to look this up earlier. It's on page M5 dash. No, sorry. Not that folder. Oh, it is.
It's Tuesday the 23rd. It's only Tuesday. It's only Tuesday.
This is all on M5-79 and M5-80. No, 81. M5-79, M5-81. It's 2 pages. It covers it all. Yes, Tori. this scoring a 4, not a 4 plus. Because here's the thing, and I need y'all to notice, look, again, you don't have to have full-blown sentences. You have to have evidence that you understand why. Convenient sample. Why is it a convenient sample? The first 20, it's easy. That's what makes it a convenient sample. Simple random sample, using a random number generator. Also could have added there, and probably should have added, that it's each number has an equally likely chance of being selected. That's the whole point of a random number generator. Volunteer sampling, literally volunteers to participate. Subjective sample, you're using a judgment. And then I gave an explanation of what it means to be not biased, and so the implication that these things are biased because they're not random. And so that's only a 4. If I wanted to score higher on my own, I would probably add extra detail on the ones that are biased.
But I did that in about 2.
Then it sounds like you made mistakes somewhere. Right? Notice you only got those 2 right. That's why you got a 2. You didn't get those correct. Yeah, guys, please understand I scored 4 all together as 1. I scored 4 all together as 1. So remember, if you see a 2 on your thing, if you look at the rubric, that means that it's partially valid, right? Indicating a good start or a good response, right? Or a good start to understanding. And so it's because you missed half of those. But you showed me enough to be like, no, I understand some of this, I just didn't get these. So we learned from that growing better. Alright, so again, M5-79, M5-81, I would go there to learn more about these types of sampling techniques. M5-79, M5-81. I would probably put this on number 4, Destiny, instead of on the rubric. Because that rubric you're going to use all year long, right? I would put that on my understanding check.
M5-81.
Where's your understanding check?
You said 79.
Oh yeah, true.
79. And then 2 pages later, it's 81 for the simple random sample. That, by the way, if you didn't know SRS, I mentioned that before, it's a simple random sample. Okay. Multiple choice. A lot of us forgot. Even though it's multiple choice, I'm going to ask you to justify.
Man, I got all them right.
Notice, and the other thing I want you to pay attention to is, I saw a lot of people talking about testing and different things like that here, but go back to the definition of what these things mean. Number 5, what is this question all about?
Can you, what
What are the treatments? So what should you probably include in your justification? Maybe what a treatment is. The treatment, remember, are the independent variables that we are manipulating or assigning, right? So what were the treatments? I saw a lot of people talking about standardized tests to measure learning. That's not the treatment, that's actually the response. After assigning the students to 1 class or to 2 classes, you would have to measure their learning on a test. That would be the dependent variable. The treatments are the independent variables, and that was what was assigned to the students. The treatments are what the researchers assigned. Yes?
My tongue hurt.
After what? Say that one more time.
2? Assigned 2?
EM to them.
Lord have mercy.
Independent variable and assign. Trust me, this is way better than what I saw a whole lot of y'all writing, okay?
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, independent variable and assigning students to, I should have said to them or to the recess periods.
Yeah.
Hey, but is that still evidence that I understand what a treatment is?
Yes.
Okay.
Just get
I would never write that on an AP exam, but you best believe,
I would.
don't you dare. Don't take an AP class with me and write that on there.
Alright, wait, what are we talking about?
Alright, please remember, and I think this is where a lot of us got lost on number 6. What is the point of an experiment?
To find, hold on.
The best answer.
Define the effect of the cause.
So to establish cause and effect.
I agree.
So what should you have talked about when we're identifying which ones are best answered by an experiment? Cause and effect. Notice A and D are best answered by just observing or surveying. Notice again, when we do an observational study or a survey, what's the point of those types of studies? To make a prediction about the population. It's called an inference, right? Do females spend more time commuting than males? I don't want to know cause and effect there. I just want to know, is that true? So I would observe commuting times. How many females and how many males use running as a primary form of exercise? I'm not going to assign them to running. I'm just going to either ask a question or I'm going to observe it happening. And so that would not be cause and effect. It's just observing. I'm trying to make a prediction about the population. With these two, I'm trying to establish cause and effect. So when you look at the last question, which one is an experiment? What are the two things now that we talked about with experiments? You
Cause
need
and effect.
cause and effect and treatments.
Prediction.
Predictions are for observational studies and observational studies and surveys. We need treatments and cause and effect with experiments. Notice for greater evidence, I identified what each of these types of surveys were. Right? Those are things we want to pay attention to.
I got it.
So,
My,
I don't know whose that is.
You turning everybody ringer off?
hey. Mine should be on the next one.
This ringer's already off, but whoever's phone this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Alright. So, please hear me very clearly on this. I will not go into this level every single time. I'll pick a couple of questions in the future, but I am always going to provide feedback and hopefully maybe even a little bit more feedback next time. I'll take the weekend to be more diligent about things so that you can learn that way. But also, what do I have available to you for free that you could learn from your mistakes?
Tutoring.
Tutoring. I'm here to help you grow and learn. Take advantage of that. All right. You can also come to tutoring and ask questions, before the understanding check, so it's not an issue. It's just my suggestion. All right. Let's get started with today. So we're gonna go back to where we were in the book. I don't remember what page that was. Maybe something like N5-11 or 12, somewhere in there. And by the way, I would try to put my understanding checks in order in my notebook, just because somewhere in there. Just because that's going to help you stay organized and keep things as they progress. All right, so we're constructing histograms, we're analyzing key features of a histogram, all that fun stuff. And you will want this back. Okay, so don't forget, first things first, with histograms, we need to make sure that we have what for the y-axis? What goes on the y-axis for a histogram?
The unit.
Relative frequency.
Thank you, the relative frequency. You should go before class.
I have to finish my T-tail.
Oh.
That is not
So
cute.
what you're telling me is you put even more liquid in your body?
Cause it's T-tail. You don't just spend $8 on a drink and not drink it.
Well, then don't do T-Town. Novel idea. By the way, hey, really quickly, when Miss Estel is here, please make sure you have out your name cards to help her learn everybody's names.
Yeah, I need some new ones.
Why?
Because
No.
you guys aren't.
I didn't ask. Did I ever tell you that it was okay to throw it
I
away?
was in my bed. Or
Okay.
did I
You
throw it?
better find it.
We gotta make another?
If you threw it away, yeah.
Bro, it's easy. Just fold a piece of paper, scratch your name on it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
By the way, there were two people, Peyton and Gabby, when she comes back. Your name was not on the back of that sheet, so make sure that I identify it before you get out of here, because I have a scan of it. All right. No, you don't want a sheet of paper. You want cardstock. I'll take care of it.
This is cardstock.
Okay, I need to cut it. Leave it back there. I'll cut it. All right. So we want relative frequency on the y-axis. Let's take some quick notes here. I would go out on a limb and say we don't have everything as detailed as we might want here, or as much as I might want. Don't forget, what are the 4 things that we should analyze?
CUSS.
right? So the first part is center, right? So I'm gonna first off keep in context, and so I might say the energy cost, or a typical, let's say it that way, yeah, the typical energy cost for top freezers is about, what does that look like? Maybe 15, 30, 45 maybe? Oh, that's not what that's going by. It's going by fives? Yeah, so $55. It's about $55, while side freezers is about $75, and bottom freezers maybe $70. It's probably, because of all these values out here, actually would get probably pulled out a little bit. You can do several different answers, but the big thing that I need you to note is this. I talked about the measure of center for how many of the distributions? All three. That's what I'm looking for. I told you all this before, right? You don't have to have those exact values, but I need you to explicitly compare all three measures of center. Okay? So what would be the next element that we might want to address?
Unusual aspect.
We could talk about unusual aspects. I will say typically I talk about spread next, but if you want to just go in that order, you can. Again, this is not an AP Stats class. I'm not stressing it a whole lot, but you do need to address all four. What's the only unusual aspect we should talk about? The bottom freezers. What?
Has more spread?
But remember, we're talking. So we'll talk
There's
about.
a gap, there's a gap.
I wouldn't even call it a gap. It's a potential outlier, right?
Oh.
Okay, so the bottom freezers have potential outliers. In cost of $140 and $150. But no others do. Notice again, I have all three there. All right, so what's the next part? Shape. Shape. So what shapes do we want to say?
But it's, the top is skewed right.
I don't even know if that's really skewed right, just because it's not really much of a tail. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I said.
The bottom one is definitely skewed right.
Right.
The other two, it's not exact, but does it, like, it would just be 2 more points, and then that would be symmetrical, right? It's not great. I would allow you to argue the top one either way, but that's what we want to recognize. So the
Would the second one be bimodal?
the second one,
Yeah.
it's not enough of a drop and then an increase afterwards be bimodal. If I was to draw a smooth curve, I would probably just go like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So the top and side freezers have roughly symmetrical distributions.
Didn't you say if it was bimodal, it would have to be like a 0 in between it?
It doesn't have to be a 0. Sorry, let me draw it. I'll finish writing that if you're still writing. For it to be bimodal, it could be something like this. Notice how that is way too big of a drop for the thing for me to just do a smooth curve like that. That would not be accurate. Once you have enough bars in between, like that, it would be bimodal, right? So it doesn't have to have a gap to be bimodal. It just needs to have several bars in a row that are significantly lower than those two groupings. Okay. Okay, so the top and side freezers have roughly symmetrical distributions, but the bottom is skewed right. Bottom freezer distribution.
We're all skinny like this.
In terms of modes, they're all what? They're all unimodal. All right, there we go. And the last thing. What's the last part after shape?
Would I be wrong if I
Spread.
would I be wrong if I put top as it was skewed right?
I would allow you to make that assessment. I would say I would at most say slightly skewed right, like that's skewed right. You know what I mean? But maybe. And that my thing is like just 2 more points on the left over here, and that would 100% be symmetrical. That's why I would say roughly symmetrical. Okay. In terms of spread, all I'm going to ask you to tell me is which one has the most spread, meaning which one has the most variability.
The bottom.
The bottom has the most variability, then what's the second?
The side.
The side, and then the top. And so that's all you would have to say about that. Bottom freezers. Have the most spread. And again, you could use the word variability there, but most spread, then side freezers, and top have the least.
Again, would I be wrong about put the top was compact?
So when talking about spread, we always want to use the term spread or variability, or a measure of spread or variability. Does that make sense? So it's like it's not like I'm going to count that against you right now in the beginning, but you would want to make that note so that you don't do that on future assessments.
So you can't just put spread, like you can't just say it's more spread?
Yeah, you could say it has larger amount of spread or it has a larger amount of variability, things like that. Yes, Emma.
I have a question about the unusual aspect.
Okay.
Why is 140 through 150 a potential outlier?
You see how those are, well, 140 and 150, you see how those are far away from the rest of the data?
Yeah,
That's why.
but why would it just be like an outlier? Why is it like a potential outlier?
Because you haven't proven that it's an outlier. In order to find out if it's an outlier or not, you have to go through box plots and look at what's called the interquartile range and find out what 1.5 times IQR above the third quartile is. Right, so that's why we don't know, because we have not learned how to prove if it is yet or not. So we would just say it's potential.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can't.
We're going to get into that, or it's
We're not going to get into that. That's a geometry with data analysis
Great.
thing. So y'all just weren't taught it, unfortunately.
oh.
Yeah. Now, if you want to take AP Stats, it's a good time. It's actually, listen. It sounds way scarier because you've never heard it before. It's not bad. It really isn't. That's one of the easiest things for students every year. They pick it up very quickly. All right. It's not. No, it's not. I had students regularly take AP Stats because they didn't feel comfortable enough going to pre-cal or AP Cal and still pass the AP exam. It's not just like, oh man, I'm the smartest mathematician ever. It's a course that everyone can be successful in if you trust me and do what you need to do.
I just don't like taking exams, that's the only reason I ain't taking classes.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I like not having to pay for college classes, so.
It's, it's a lot more different, but it's.
True.
Statistics, they recommend.
I know she's going to
It's
California.
different. I like AP Stats way better. All right, we got to get started with our content for today. So again, we're talking about normal distributions. We're going to get into this yesterday. I finally included this slide. I don't know why I missed it yesterday, but it's here. don't forget we talked about parameters and statistics yesterday. What's the difference between a parameter and a statistic?
What page we on?
Parameter,
M5-14.
that one, M5-14. A parameter is a value for a population, meaning, right, mu, the population mean, or sigma, the population standard deviation. Those are parameters. The statistics are the values from the samples, right? The X bar for sample mean or S for sample standard deviation. And that's important because we're using our statistics to estimate the parameters. And then we talked here, which of these graphs had the most variability? The bottom one. Because why? It was the shortest, so it's the most spread out, right? For it to be that short, it has to spread out. The one with the least variability was A, to be that tall, it has to be compact around the mean, okay? The tighter or the less variability, the taller that histogram gets. Okay, that's where we ended yesterday. So here, I want you to just go ahead and look at 2A and 2B, right? Identify and compare the mean of each company. Notice, do you have any numbers here? No. So just like here, where I just talked about which one has the most spread, which one has the least, that's all I'm asking you to do here. So talk about the means, talk about the standard deviations, take a few minutes to discuss that in your small groups. I'll listen in for your discussions and active collaboration. Questions before I let you go and start talking in your small groups. Destiny. This is number 2, D, E, and F.
Huh?
It should be on the next page on the right side. You good with that? All right, go ahead and get to work.
No, I don't. No, I've talked to you before. I just have a period cycle, so I get a period like every 10 months. Oh. So basically, what do you guys do?
Okay, the means look the same.
I would just look at it and just estimate. Remember how I said earlier with the spread? Brad just said which one has the highest spread, which one has the highest or lowest spread, all that kind of stuff. So like here, if I'm talking about the means, which one do you think is going to have the highest mean?
They're higher. They have.
So I would point this one thing out. That's one number, okay?
They don't have.
The mean is a
They're all
measure
the
of
same.
That's what I was
center
saying.
of
Look,
prospect and shade spread. The mean is the center. Look at those again. Which of those has the highest center?
It was hard to hear back.
I think
I want y'all to look at Brantley's right
it's
here.
all the same.
Which of those vertical lines is furthest to the right?
They're all.
Remember, mean is not how high it goes. How high it goes is about the variability of the spread. The mean is where that center is located. Which one's furthest to the right?
They all have a lot of variability.
But also
But
the
we don't need to
battery
write
lives
those in,
of the
right?
cell
Like
phone
just
are
looking here,
from 3
it's the
different
furthest to the
companies.
right, so I know F has the
The
highest.
cell phone line
Does that make
always
sense?
the same.
That's all you have to notice is whatever's furthest to the right will have the highest mean.
Yes.
Okay?
So yeah, so they're all the same.
What? What I said?
And it makes sense. No,
No,
stop.
we agree that it's
No.
all the exact same.
Okay, but that's not.
Okay, I gotta ask you a question though. Look at the questions
No,
again.
they don't.
Stop and listen. Read your questions. Where does it ask about shape? It
Nothing.
doesn't. Read your questions. What does A ask about?
Identify
The
and compare.
The mean. So it really is just, well, look at them. So think about if you have a number line, right? When would you have a larger mean on a number line?
Whatever's to the right.
Whatever's furthest to the right. Look at your graphs again.
L. And the lowest would be, right?
Huh?
The lowest would be, right?
Talk about your group, see if they
If it
agree.
was asking, it would be.
But would it? What if it was F?
But no, F is the highest, this is just farthest to the right. D is the lowest. It's like a
Yeah, standard deviation for each one.
I mean, that's cool and all, but like, have you written anything for A and B? Come on. Let's start getting some ideas down. Okay, so write them down.
He said height is very, very, very.
We'll talk about it. Word it as well as you can right now.
If those are exact same shape, one can't differ.
have you been collaborating with your group at all? 'Cause I see the three of them talk. I don't want you to come down to me. I need you to start talking about it. It's 170 range. 170? Okay, have you all answered A and B yet? Oh, you can write down.
So identify which company.
Write it down.
If we do the highest, it would be,
Well, here's what I will say is there's a lot of space there. I would just write small
Right.
top so that if you need to add any other details or fix any mistakes, you have room.
F is the highest.
You also have a
D is the
lot of room
lowest.
to look at.
And then compare the standard deviation of each distribution with the others. They're the same.
What is standard deviation? Roughly, I wouldn't say roughly. Remember how we worked through that long? I want to say roughly because and that was a measure of the spread of very clearly, right? And that ties into what we just talked about. Think about what the difference of one and standard deviation. And then look at the
We would have locked down really like the storage. I usually.
So that's a good question.
Make that nervous, you gotta go.
Compare the standard deviation of each distribution with the others. What if you think they're all the same?
I put it at our same, I put they, alike in shape and height. I don't know why I just read this.
But if they're all like alike in shape and height, the question is about standard deviation, right?
So is that, I mean.
Standard
we talked about it.
deviation.
You already skipped it. Didn't we talk about it in the very previous
A
page?
measure of how spread out the data are from the mean.
Right, so how spread out those data from the mean. If they look exactly the same in height and in shape, what's their spread?
Nothing.
It's not nothing, it's the...
Would it be D?
Okay, so let me say
But
this.
it's a number,
We
right?
talked, no, it's not a number, you're just comparing them. Right? Just like we compared the spread for A, B, and C. What did we talk about on number one with spread? Now, Gabby, what was your question? Does that answer your question, or? Okay. So remember, on number one on the previous page, we identified what the spread was, or the standard deviation was, based on some important criteria. Look at that for part B.
So what do you, what do y'all think for A?
So for A, F is the highest.
Say it one more time. Right, so in order for it to get that high, it would be more compact around the mean, and so it would have a lower spread or lower standard deviation, right? Good question. Okay.
We're looking at B right now. We haven't got any.
Thank you. Thank you. I know some of us are still writing down, but from what I could see, everyone has had at least discussions about both these parts. And so there was a little bit of difficulty with 2A to get us started, but I think eventually everyone got there, so I'm not going to call any groups to get us started, but raise your hand, volunteer, who wants to talk about comparing the means of each company. I'll go with Emma to start. Listen in, don't forget guys, listen very clearly on this.
So
Listen to each other's arguments, and then be prepared to say, hey, I want to add on to that, or I want to push back a little bit. Maybe there was something that wasn't 100% accurate. That's how we grow and learn from each other, okay? So, I don't know that's going to be the case, but you have to be listening and be ready for that. So, Emma, what you got?
So our group decided, we thought of it as kind of like a number line.
Okay?
So the farther you go to the right, the higher it'll get. So F would be the highest, E would be like in the middle, and then D would be the lowest.
Okay? Anybody want to push back on that or add on to that? Elboria?
They look pretty much the same. Like, I mean, I can understand what she means by that, but it looks pretty much the same from like, you know, like, since it's like pretty much like based all together.
Can you clarify what looks the same?
Like how they peak up, like it kind of like pretty much looks the same. From
So like how high it is?